Good evening, America. Welcome to your Thursday edition of Just the News, No Noise. I'm your host, John Solomon, and reporting to you as always from Washington, D.C. It's another sunny day, which means, unfortunately, it's prime weather for all the anti-Israel protesters who are storming campuses all across this country, more than 4 dozen now, especially here, even in Washington, D.C. George Washington University, which is just a few blocks from my own news office here, was, well, raging on yesterday. Nevertheless, as President Biden remains silent on the city uprising and the latest protests, House Oversight Committee members, including its chairman, James Comer, went right to ground zero. They went to George Washington University yesterday, and they were met by hecklers. They stood their ground. I think Americans got to see some of the lunacy of these protests. After visiting ground zero, Chairman Comer set a hearing for next Wednesday, where his committee is set to interview Metropolitan Police Chief Pamela Smith and D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser about why the D.C. Police Department rejected the university's request for help in removing these radical students and these protesters who continue to occupy campuses. At the top of the hour, we'll be joined by Chairman Comer to talk about his upcoming hearing and what he witnessed on that campus yesterday. It was really pretty dramatic stuff. We had some great video footage. He also had a fire exchange with EcoHealth Alliance President Peter Daszak. Yep, all those stories that you were told were conspiracy theories about the Wuhan lab, well, they all came true thanks to the great work of Chairman Comer's committee. We're going to have a lot of that in the next few minutes. But first, this is the time we always turn to my amazing co-host, Amanda Head. She's in Los Angeles. She has a lot more good headlines on her radar. Amanda, how you doing today?
Hi, I'm fine and dandy. Good evening to all of you. A few stories have piqued my interest, so I'm going to dive straight in. And I encourage everybody to head over to justthenews.com to follow up on all of the stories that we're going to be talking about tonight. But in some business news, the CEO of Peloton is stepping down, and the company is cutting 15% of its global workforce, according to a new announcement. The famous stationary bike company has fallen into a post-pandemic slump and has had trouble regaining its footing. Now, while they continue their operations, the company believes that the $200 million decrease in expenses is going to help them improve and invest in software, hardware, content innovation, and much more. Meanwhile, in a very weird turn of events, a second Boeing whistleblower who sounded the alarm about one of the company's suppliers ignoring production defects of the 737 MAX plane has died at the age of 45. This comes just about 2 months after the 62-year-old Boeing employee, John Barnett, raised similar concerns and also died tragically in what was allegedly a self-inflicted gunshot wound. So make whatever you'd like to out of that news. But of course, we pray for their families. Now, meanwhile, in a video that went viral on X, Florida Congressman Matt Gaetz posted a video that showed a former prosecutor who investigated former President Trump pleading the fifth under questioning about his actions. The video was recorded during a closed-door session of the Select Subcommittee on the Weaponization of the Federal Government in May of last year. According to a congressional source, Mark Pomerantz, former special assistant to the New York County District Attorney, can be seen in the video declining to answer several questions, while his counsel appeared to object to almost every single question. Now, remember, Pomerantz resigned on February 23rd of 2022, and in his resignation letter, he argued that the evidence is sufficient to establish Mr. Trump's guilt beyond a reasonable doubt and that the public interest warrants the criminal prosecution of Mr. Trump. Of course, this helped lead to Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg's charging of the former president in April of 2023. Imagine that, John, all of these interesting and serendipitous connections.
Yeah, and the unwillingness to answer questions. If you were involved in this, give the American people the truth. What do you got to hide? I think that's what lawmakers have been able to draw out on so many of these very important stories. Another one that we're tracking, as you know, we've done a lot of work on the coordination between the Biden White House, the National Archives, the Justice Department to bring the classified records case against President Trump. New information, the National Archives had a meeting with the White House counsel, Joe Biden's White House counsel's office, the very day that President Trump was indicted in that case. That's raising a lot of eyebrows. We got a lot of questions about that. We're continuing to do reporting. But meanwhile, we're going to turn to the story that everybody's talking about, the intolerance, hatred, and really extraordinarily shameful display of our college students on so many campuses. Our next guest, he went to ground zero yesterday. He's the chairman of the Oversight Committee, James Comer. He joins us right now. Mr. Chairman, great to have you back on the show.
Always a pleasure to be on your show, John.
Yeah, we love to have you, sir. You decided right to go into the heart of the belly of the beast. You confronted those protesters at George Washington University. We had reporters there. Really a remarkable moment. Tell us what you witnessed when you confronted those protesters.
Well, I was shocked. First of all, they were either a lot of non-traditional students or they were much older than the average college student. I suspect that they weren't even in college. The president of the university also estimated that 80% of the protesters were not students at George Washington University. She said they could have been students at other universities, and certainly some of them, by their appearance, appeared to definitely be well beyond the age of a college student who would be protesting. But I was shocked at the things they were saying. We saw lots of Palestine flags, lots of Palestinian clothing. You had different chants. One chant said "Death to Israel."
Yeah.
I mean, it was stuff that you would never believe would be in the United States. I guess the most troubling thing, John, is those people aren't supposed to be there. It is against the law to trespass, and you had those people setting up encampments on that university. And most university police, law enforcement agencies, they don't even carry guns. They're not equipped for riots and things like that. They've requested help from Washington, D.C., and Washington, D.C. Obviously is a blue-run city, and we know that anti-Semitic wing has taken over the Democrat Party. They don't want to do anything to offend the anti-Semitic wing of the Democrat Party. Therefore, George Washington's on its own.
Wow. Scary.
Well, considering their ignorance on the history of that region, maybe they all just got held back a lot, and that's why they're so old. I wanted to ask you about the commitment to follow the money. I mean, there seem to be a number, at least two, dark money groups behind these protesters, the ones who obviously aren't students there. If you are able to track that money trail back to individual organizations or individuals, how do you push back on that? What should be the punishment?
Well, we're going to follow the money in the same way that we've been investigating the Biden family. We're going to try to identify the groups and figure out where their banks are. We've had great success in subpoenaing private sector banks. Most banks that we've dealt with want to cooperate with us when they see criminal activity. And I don't think any bank would support the dark money groups that are funding this type of hate. I mean, George Washington University has over 20% of their student body population is Jewish. These Jewish students obviously feel unsafe. And this is not something that we should see on any campus in America, but we know this isn't a generic movement. We know that this is well organized, that there are groups behind the scenes that are paying for the tents. They're paying for a lot of the material, the propaganda material that they're handing out. They're providing food. We want to know who's behind this, and then we want to hold them accountable because they're involved in trespassing at the very least, and probably a lot more crimes than that.
Yeah. Sir, Josh Burkinian, congressman from Oklahoma, is on my podcast, and he said there's a growing number of lawmakers that want to start to pull back funding from universities and nonprofits that are at the heart of these protests. Do you think that's likely to happen soon?
Well, I hope so. And John, I was very disappointed in the House Republican Appropriation Committee that we didn't hold anyone accountable last year. You have all these government agencies that are abusing the trust of the American taxpayers. They're skirting oversight. They're not transparent. But for whatever reason, we have Republicans that caved in on it. This is something that appears there's overwhelming support. These universities get a lot of money. Where most of these protests are occurring across the United States are big universities that have huge federal budgets in their research and development budgets and other areas of their overall budget on campus. They need to be held accountable. They need to be held accountable if they don't suspend these students and do everything in their ability to put an end to this hostility towards Jewish students. So hopefully we'll be able to do that, John. I support it, but I think that the American people are pretty outraged by this, and they expect the Republicans in Congress to respond in kind with the power of the purse.
Great point.
Mr. Chairman, I want to ask you about that hearing yesterday held by the Select Subcommittee on COVID with Dr. Peter Daszak, the president of EcoHealth Alliance. You had a line of questioning with him where you were asking him if he had a standing relationship with the intelligence community or had ever acted on behalf of that community as an informant. He seemed to be choosing his words very carefully when he was answering, maybe some obfuscation thrown in. What did you make of that?
Well, I've suspected for a long time that Peter Daszak may have been an informant for the intelligence community. From what I've learned in trying to chase these criminals, international criminals have been funding the Biden shenanigans for over a decade. The informants all fit a pattern. And what it appears at the Wuhan lab, and Dasick confirmed this yesterday, the intelligence community was concerned about that lab. He had communicated, he admitted under oath that he communicated with the intelligence community prior to COVID. There are some that suspect that maybe Dasick was an American spy, an informant that was going in and trying to determine on behalf of the United States what was going on in that lab. Was China making bioweaponry or whatever? What's important about that is that would prove the American government knew that that lab was up to no good. They were doing gain of function research. Not only that, we were funding it through American tax dollars. EcoHealth Alliance never should have gotten any American tax dollars. And then they never should have had their grants renewed. It's so suspicious how they were getting all this money, even when they were out of compliance in their grants. So, this goes to all the conspiracy theories that were, shot down by the liberal mainstream media and the Democrats and all that the government didn't know anything about it. It's odd that Peter Dasick was in communication with the intelligence community. I was never in communication with the intelligence communities or anything when I was before this Biden investigation. So very few people are. Why was he in communication with them? Obviously, the American government knew that lab was up to no good, and I think Dasick knows a whole lot more than he would say under oath. But he did not deny that he was an informant of some type for our American intelligence community.
Wow, that's the ground that we're going to have to plow to get some more facts. Sir, I want to turn to a unique connection between the Hamas crisis we're all still dealing with and the Biden family finances. New court documents came out a few days ago. James Biden was apparently, according to the testimony, in a bankruptcy case, doing business with Qatar. Qatar, one of the biggest protectors of Hamas. Qatar, one of the biggest funders of these liberal universities in America. I think $5 billion over the last couple decades to these universities. Yet another country that has, sort of a checkered past. Obviously, it's an ally at times, but how shocking was it that Jim Biden was working on with Qatar as well?
I'm not. We've seen evidence that suggests his influence peddling, Jim Biden's influence peddling, revolved around Middle East, and we know that the Biden would do anything for money. We know that they were for sale to the highest bidder, and you look at what happened with policy decisions with respect to this. All the money that Biden's got from China. You and I believe, John, that Joe Biden has an unusually soft on China platform. And you look at Qatar or Qatar, however you want to pronounce it now. It used to be Qatar, now it's Qatar. That country should be labeled on the terrorist watch list, but the Biden administration refuses to do that. So is that because his brother was receiving money from a Qatari government official? These are questions that need to be answered. We're doing our best in this oversight investigation with the limited tools we have and facing all the obstruction that we have faced. But look, this is another example of a Biden family member getting money from a shady person in a shady country. And I think that the American people have already made their minds up that what the Biden family's been doing for decades with our adversaries around the world is wrong. And I hope within the next few weeks to be able to start the process of holding them accountable for this wrongdoing.
Wow. Can we ask about that? What will that look like? What could that accountability possibly look like?
Well, I think there's obviously many crimes that have been committed, many financial crimes by the Biden family. And I think Joe Biden has clearly demonstrated that he has violated the law as well. He's lied to the American people about his knowledge of, involvement with, and participation in his family's business schemes. He's not been honest. He's still not being honest about his knowledge of what his family was doing and the money that Joe Biden himself put in his pocket. So we're doing everything we can. We've gotten a lot of documents in from Devin Archer that I subpoenaed, 3.7 million documents, which that's ridiculous, wow. But trying to go through that. We've got some phone records and a few more documents. And, every day we find something new out, John. If you had a real investigative body like the IRS or the FBI that was focused, or the Department of Justice that was focused solely on investigating the Bidens, or a special counsel, and you had unlimited resources and the ability to not be obstructed by anyone, there's no telling what we would find. But we found enough, and it's pretty bad. And I think the Bidens need to be held accountable for their wrongdoing.
Something I want to mention, 67% of Americans in a poll last week said they think Joe Biden did something illegal or unethical. That's because of what you uncovered, sir. You have made a big difference. Thanks for getting us those facts.
Well, thank you.
All right, sir. Good. All right, we're going to take a quick commercial break. Don't go anywhere, though. We got a lot more news to come up, including with the founder of the Empower Oversight Whistleblower 2024, and you must start taking care of your liver now, more than ever. Why? Because the latest data from the American Heart Association indicates that adults with fatty liver were 3.5 times more likely to have heart failure than those without. The American Liver Foundation says that 100 million Americans have fatty liver, which means many people are at risk. We throw everything at our liver, right? Cholesterol, alcohol, toxins, Tylenol, statins, cigarettes. You know the list. That's why so many of us have a sluggish fatty liver that makes us gain weight and lose energy. Now, for decades, your liver has helped you with over 500 key functions every day. It's time for you to help your liver. There's a solution. Liver Health Formula, an all-natural supplement which contains 11 clinically proven botanicals that help recharge and protect your liver. You can try Liver Health Formula and receive a free bottle of nano-powered omega-3 to keep your heart healthy as well. Try Liver Health Formula by going right now to getliverhelp.com/justnews and claim your free bonus. One time, that's getliverhelp.com/justnews.
Welcome back, everybody. You might remember the story we broke, I think, last year, back in 2017. The DOJ subpoenaed Google for the personal phone records and emails of congressional staffers while then Senate Judiciary Committee Chairman Chuck Grassley was reviewing the Justice Department's handling of the so-called Steele dossier. Now, in October of last year, Ohio Congressman and House Judiciary Committee Chairman Jim Jordan opened a formal investigation into the incident. Now, the whistleblower organization Empower Oversight has asked the DOJ for these records to be unsealed. And we are excited to continue following this important investigation with Jason Foster. He is the founder of Empower Oversight. Jason, thanks so much for joining us. Great to have you back.
Thanks for having me.
You know, the DOJ has been a little reticent to comply with any type of transparency, especially under this administration. But has the pressure on the DOJ been fruitful? What have you got? What do you expect to be getting?
Well, so we're not relying on the DOJ anymore. We went to court today, and we filed a motion to intervene in the 2017 sealed grand jury case related to the probe of the leak of the Carter Page FISA application. It's pursuant to that investigation that we believe that the subpoenas were issued for my telephone records and email records, and along with a large group of bipartisan, Republican and Democrat staffers from both sides of the aisle and both sides of the Hill, the House and Senate staffers. So what we did today was we filed in court, and we asked the court to order that all of the filings that supposedly justified the secrecy for the last 6 years be unsealed, so that the American public can see what arguments the Justice Department made to the court and whether or not the Justice Department was honest and open and clear with the court about the implications of what it was asking for. The key argument that we make in the brief is, look, all Google got was a list of phone numbers and email addresses, and they were told, please provide all the records of communications to and from these accounts. They didn't say, the Justice Department didn't tell Google that, all of these accounts belong to congressional staffers, right? Which raises all kinds of constitutional issues. It raises whistleblower protection issues. I mean, all of us, we use confidential sources just like journalists do. And we talk to whistleblowers. And if the Justice Department can not only gather our communications, know exactly who we're speaking with, when, how often, for how long, they can easily identify our confidential sources and whistleblowers who are giving us information about their misconduct. And so, there are constitutional issues that are very similar to journalist source privilege issues under the First Amendment, but there's also bigger, separation of powers issues. Congress is a separate and independent branch of government. We do oversight of the Justice Department based on our constitutional authorities. And for the Justice Department to seek these records, it should at least have told the court that that's what they were doing. But I don't think they did. And when we get these records unsealed, we'll see whether they were honest and open with the court, that these records requests were implicated all these constitutional privileges. In the last several months since I got the notice from Google, I've been talking to Google's lawyers, and they've been very cooperative and provided me answers to my questions. And, it was very clear they didn't know, because the Justice Department didn't tell them. They get thousands of these requests all the time, and usually it's legitimate law enforcement, right? So they just had a list of phone numbers and email addresses, and they complied, and they didn't resist because they didn't know there were any constitutional issues that are being raised. So the key question is, and asking the court to order that all these the Justice Department's filings be unsealed will help us answer this question. The key question is, did they similarly mislead the court?
Yeah. And we know what happened in the Steele dossier and the FISA warrant for Carter Page. The answer is yes, they did mislead the court. So this is a really important question. You're a victim here as well as the person fighting this. We know Kash Patel was another. We've identified, I think, a total of 11 or 12 congressional staffers or Senate staffers, Democrat and Republican alike, who were targeted in this same time frame just by calling around and finding out. That is a large dragnet for an institution that was doing legitimate oversight, and the agency that they're doing oversight on is spying on them at the same time. Is that the right way to look at this?
Essentially, yes. I mean, they collected the communications records of all the staff who had seen the Carter Page FISA application while it was still classified. Wow. And that's, Republicans and Democrats on the Senate Judiciary Committee. It's Republicans and Democrats on the House Intelligence Committee. There was no notice to Congress. Congress didn't. This is another point we make in the brief.
That's right.
Congress didn't. It's not like Congress had an opportunity to object or raise any, privilege issues because they weren't aware of it, because the Justice Department ordered Google to keep it from the people whose records were sought without, and the question is, did they tell them that, these were congressional staffers? And members too. There's some member information. My understanding is in that was caught up in this as well. So it's not a partisan issue. It's not it's the permanent government. This process is essentially a rubber stamp process. I think that's what we're going to see when we get these records unsealed, when we get these filings unsealed from the Justice Department. It's just a box checking exercise, right? Yeah. They say, oh, the statute says we have to do the following 4 things, and make these showings before we can ask for a gag order and tell Google they can't tell anybody. And so they just go to the court ex parte, which means without the other side knowing about it. It's just the Justice Department and the court. Nobody else gets to hear the arguments. And they're still sealed here, 6 years later. And they go and they just, we pinky swear, yeah, we meet the requirements of the statute. And there's nobody there to, there's no opposing party to challenge that. And so it's just, they just make an assertion to the court, and the court, just rubber stamps it. Essentially, I think. I mean, we'll see when we get the filings unsealed. But that's my understanding of essentially how the process works.
Pretty extraordinary.
Yeah. And that's been a big criticism with FISA and the way that it operates as well. Whether it is you working with Senator Chuck Grassley on the Senate Judiciary side or Devin Nunes and Kash Patel on the House Intel side, there seems to be an attitude that's allowing what happened to happen. Is it hubris thinking that they won't get caught? Is it paranoia over what you guys are doing? Maybe a combination thereof?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think it's definitely hubris, right? I mean, they see themselves as, the good guys. In fact, there's a training slide. So there's policies at the Justice Department that says that there has to be, particular facts that justify, if you're going to gag a company like Google from telling its customers that it complied with the subpoena, that you have to meet certain requirements. And but there's a training slide where we found out that assistant U.S. attorneys are actually told, even though the written policy says, don't always apply for a gag order, only do it when it's absolutely necessary. But the training that they give the assistant U.S. attorneys is, no. Every time you submit a subpoena, we want to make sure that you always, not just when it's necessary, always submit your gag order application so that the bad guys don't know that we're subpoenaing their records. So their view is they're the good guys, and anybody whose information, private information they're seeking is just automatically in the bad guy category.
Yeah, amazing. Jason, we've got about a minute left. Real quickly, you represent some very important whistleblowers, IRS and FBI whistleblowers, Marcus Allen among them. Many of these guys have been denied salary for a long time. Has there been any changes, any relenting by the government, or are these gentlemen still in limbo?
They are still in limbo. They are still suspended without pay, they're still being told they can't take outside work or take outside charity. But hopefully soon we will have, the IG has been investigating since we put in our initial complaint a year ago. That investigation should be coming to a close by now, in the very near future, and hopefully we'll have some news for you on that very soon.
Very good. Sounds like important stuff.
Unbelievable. Jason, the work that you and your organization do is absolutely invaluable. It's amazing that whistleblowers in this country who are calling out possible corruption continue to get treated this way, but we're so glad that you are there to support them.
Thank you. Appreciate you having me on.
Thank you so much. Our pleasure. All right, everybody, you don't want to go anywhere because John and I are going to be speaking with Thomas Corbett-Dillon. He's the former advisor to UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson. We're going to be talking to him about the Biden administration potentially bringing Palestinian refugees to the United States. Stick around.
Welcome back, America. Internal federal governments obtained by CBS News reveal that the Biden administration is discussing bringing certain Palestinian refugees to the United States. The documents show that senior officials are looking at the possibility of bringing over Palestinians from Gaza who have immediate family members that are either American citizens or permanent U.S. residents. Joining us now to talk about this is Thomas Corbett-Dillon, a former advisor to UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson and current political consultant. And he joins us now. Thomas, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Yeah, good to have you on. All right. So England has a lot of, Great Britain has a lot of experience with refugees. There's a lot of concern in America about bringing Palestinians over at this particular moment, particularly with the screening process. Tell us what you think is going on here.
I mean, can you imagine that this administration look at something that's happening in Israel and Gaza and think, hey, these are guys we want to bring to this country? I mean, these people are crazy. So, and I think the fact that this has been leaked shows you that actually what this is it's a campaign tactic. This is Biden appealing to his left wing to try and appease them and say, hey, we're on the side of Gaza. So I don't think this is ever going to come to anything serious. I think this is another tactic in the Biden campaign, desperately trying to get support from anyone he can. So I wouldn't be worrying too much about Gazans at the doorstep. I think we've got more to worry about at the southern border than them flying them in from there. But I wouldn't be surprised with this administration,
Political head fake. Yeah.
Indeed. I wanted to ask you, though, about how it worked out for the UK, though, because England at large, but London in particular, has had a deluge of Middle Eastern immigrants come into the city. How has that worked out?
Yeah, well, how do you think it's worked out? I mean, I don't recognize my country anymore. I go to London. It's almost an Islamic republic. We saw the Pakistani flag being flown from Westminster Abbey, which was a real outrage. And of course, then what happens? We had St. George's Day, which, the English version of St. Patrick's Day, a very important day for English people. And there was no celebrations, but for the Muslim Eid and all of these Ramadan, they lit the streets up. The mayor, of course, is a Muslim. So, what happens is these people come, they take over positions of power, they vote as a bloc. And very quickly, the indigenous people, which of course the left love to talk about indigenous people, I like to remind them that we are the indigenous people of England. So maybe I should be the victim in this. I don't know. We're going to play their own game. But no, it's a real shame. It's not advisable, that's for sure.
Yeah, and there's been so many horrific security episodes in Paris and London over the last few years from some of those players. That's what makes everyone really scared. I want to turn to another subject because we are in the midst of a big transgenderism movement in America. A lot of discontent, a lot of court cases, The Title IX changes by President Biden, not very popular in many states. UK's National Health Service did something that the United States hasn't had the courage to do yet, and that is to declare that sex is a biological fact that needs to be protected, a major shift away from gender ideology. This follows after Great Britain also has moved to stop transgender surgeries on young children. Great Britain is way ahead of America when it comes to common sense on this issue, no?
Yeah, way ahead, and I think it comes down to a simple fact that there is no money to be made in the UK in pushing these gender reassignment and these sorts of things onto children, where unfortunately there is a lot of money being made in the United States by these gender clinics that, they're charging the insurances and all of these things, whereas in the UK they're looking at it and saying, why are we paying hundreds of thousands of dollars for these people that are most of the time mentally ill. I know I'm not allowed to say that, but, but of course, that is the case. So the UK, yes, they're saying there's no money to be made. We're going to push back on this. Whereas, of course, in the United States, these gender clinics around the country are encouraging. You call up one of these gender clinics, they say, oh, yeah, come on in. We can help you. Give us your insurance. So, there's money to be made. So it's really a sad situation that's happening in the United States.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, and you think it's money driven here?
I think very much so. I think that, a lot of people in this space are making a lot of money out of this. Whereas, if you actually get to the truth of the issue, they know that this is not helping. I mean, most of the people that go through this transition experience even more mental issues afterwards. So, it isn't really something that we should be encouraging, particularly children, to do, which I think is the real sad part of this.
Yeah, good point. Good point. I want to ask a little bit about the royal family. King Charles just resuming his royal duties after cancer diagnosis. Of course, Princess Kate also going through this. It's a pretty extraordinary time. How is the citizens and their royal family viewing this moment right now?
Well, it's sad. And, unfortunately, I think it represents the wider state of the United Kingdom on the global stage. It's never really been the same since we lost Her Majesty the Queen. No one will come close to that. But I think it's just sort of, a truly collapsed empire now. And I often say to Americans is that, they like to laugh and joke and say, oh, look, the UK is nothing now. And I remind them, we were once the richest and the most powerful nation in the world. So never underestimate how far an empire can fall. So, if America doesn't sort itself out, you might be heading down the same path as the British Empire, which is a scary place for the world.
Words of wisdom.
I wanted to ask you, though, sentiment towards the crown in the UK, because I have noticed a demonstrable shift in the United States in support for the monarchy. And it's been really strange because it seems like it came fresh off the heels of Meghan Markle and Prince Harry's criticism of the crown, and that almost had the opposite effect on Americans. Anything like that happening in the UK?
The UK is a weird one when it comes to the sentiment of the crown. There's the people that are very passionate. But, myself personally, I am a monarchist, and I do believe that monarchy is the best system, which is why I'm putting forward that we should have a king of America. And I think it's got to be Donald Trump. I think this is the only man that can step into the shoes, those golden shoes. So, I think everyone's starting to come around and say maybe monarchy is not too bad of a system. But I do wish that King Charles would stand up for his country and maybe push back against some of these crazy policies that are being pushed by his politicians and actually say, I am supposedly the God-given right to protect King of England, to, be the King of England. Maybe he should push back and start, being a little bit stronger, I would like to see. But yes, definitely we're voting, we're not voting, we're anointing President Trump as the King of America.
That's very funny.
I think he'd probably accept that.
Tom, speaking of President Trump, former President Trump, about a year ago, everyone in Europe was giving these, saying, we don't want him. They're coming to the realization there's a good chance they may be dealing with them. And there's been a softening of some of the rhetoric and even some engagement with some Trump policies that are making sense in Europe. Are you sensing a little bit of shift in the sentiments of Europeans right now?
I love it, and I love being able to sit back and tell them I told you so. They all held back. They all, especially the British government, they didn't want to engage with Trump. We should have done a trade deal with the greatest tradesman that exists in the world. We needed a trade deal, but the British establishment was so worried at offending the Democrats when they got back in. They were saying, we don't want to be, it doesn't want to be the Trump deal. And what of course happened is the Democrats came back in, and the British are evil. We're colonialists. Biden won't engage with us. We've got nothing out of the Biden regime. So, of course, now they're all scrambling to go back to Trump and, crawling back to him. You've got David Cameron going and visiting him at Mar-a-Lago, cap in hand. So I'm enjoying it. People are finally waking up that actually Trump is the best thing for the world. So it's a good time to be on the Trump administration. I think he's getting a lot of calls from a lot of people.
It's funny.
I think you're right. It's been amazing to see that parade.
Yeah, it's true. All right, Tom, it's great to have you here. What a great segment. We can be sure to get you on again real soon. A lot more to talk about in the weeks ahead. Thanks again.
Glad to be here. Thank you.
All right, folks, we've got to take a quick commercial break, but when we come back, Amanda and I will be speaking with Jonathan Rose, the CEO of Genesis Gold Group, one of our new partners here at Just the News. The economy. Everybody's worried about it. New numbers this week only added to the worries. We'll cover all that right after these messages. Welcome back, America. While most of the country's attention has been focused on what's been going on our college campuses, the violence, the hate, the tensions, a lot of news has occurred on the economic front. And by the way, not much of it good. Congress keeps spending money. Yep, the deficit keeps going at $1 trillion every 3 months. The prices of basic goods and services continue to increase, and there are warning signs all across the economy. There was a bank takeover just earlier this week, the first we've had in a while. And of course, a lot of signs, including the Fed, not wanting to lower interest rate because it says all that inflation is still there. Very similar. Well, we have a great partnership today, and we're going to be joined by Jonathan Rose, our great new partner at Genesis Gold Group. Jonathan, a lot to be worried about, a lot to be thinking about hedging your bets in this economy right now, right?
Absolutely. And I think you hit the nail on the head. There's a lot of distraction taking place, obviously, with all the riots and, unsettledness happening within these campuses across America. It's kind of like, look over here. These are serious domestic issues that we're facing. But is it also a distraction? Because when we look to the other side of the field, we're really hearing the bells being rang and the flags being waved by Wall Street, telling us that, hey, these local banks, regional banks, they're going to continue to fail. And in fact, Jerome Powell, head of the Federal Reserve, is actually being very vocal about this, telling us that expect more bank failures. And when you combine that with all the debt that this country is in, and that's something that I'm vocal about, that debt does matter, we're amassing $1 trillion in debt every 90 days, which, by the way, is about the spending yearly for our national defense budget, which just blows my mind. And you have to ask, how's this going to end for the US dollar? Well, I can tell you this, folks, because I've been in finance since, back in London, working on the London Metal Exchange and Merrill Lynch and Morgan Stanley. Fast forward to today, we're in uncharted waters, John, and I think what people need to learn is what's about to happen next and really how to prepare for the future financially, and understanding that you want to be proactive and not reactive to these markets, because all the signs are telltale signs of a correction that's definitely looming around the corner.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah, you really don't want to have to react after things crash. I think a lot of people, when it comes to purchasing precious metals, particularly gold, they think that is for the bougie elite, the people who have a lot of expendable income. But it is pretty vital for anyone to diversify and invest, right?
Yeah, I love how you put it, for the bougie elite, because then they also say the doomsday or the prepper. So what about everyone in the middle? So I think today that encompasses everyone, where gold used to be, oh, you're paranoid if you're holding on to gold. No, gold is an integral part of a balanced portfolio. I used to be a registered financial consultant, and when you work under the synopsis of a broker-dealer, if they don't sell gold, it's because they're not making enough money from putting you in and out of the markets. They can't nickel and dime you. In fact, this is what people should be holding on to, right. physical gold. There's many ways to own gold. So, people may say, well, what about gold mining shares? And not to say that they're bad, but again, you're investing in a management team, the CEOs, the board of directors. If you don't mine any gold out of the ground, you as a shareholder do not make any money. Another way to be involved in gold is ETFs, electronic traded funds. Again, you're getting the exposure of the ups and downs of the market, but again, you're not actually getting the physical metals in your hand. And then the third way, which obviously I'm an advocate about, is to do just that. Hold on to it. Something solid, tangible. Gold's never been worth zero. It's tracking 5 years. I look at my chart, nearly 82% growth in the past 5 years. Now, does that mean it will do another 82% in the following 5 years? And anyone that says that should be a warning flag, because nobody has a crystal ball. But we have a pretty good roadmap. And the Federal Reserve, the banking institutions, top economists are telling us what this roadmap looks like. So I think the growth for gold is $3,000 an ounce, could possibly happen before the end of this year. And I personally believe $5,000 an ounce in the very near future. So again, gold is an integral part of a balanced portfolio. And people may say, well, what's the best way to hold gold? Is it coins? Is it bars? So that's really where the education part comes in, and educating people how to hold on to this yellow metal. Is it through an IRA? Is it through a 401k, like a tax deferred plan, which many of our clients actually use and utilize? And then when they take distributions, they take possession of the metal. Or do you just want to hold gold and assets like silver at home, keep it somewhere safe? So there's different variables, different solutions out there for people that want to get exposure to gold. But again, if you're going to be a part of a commodity such as gold, the safest way, in my opinion, is to physically hold on to it yourself.
Yeah, there's nothing like having the gold standard in your possession. Jonathan, I want to talk about the dreaded S word, stagflation. All right, growth is underperforming and inflation is overperforming. We're in a really difficult moment. Tell us how gold creates stability in the portfolio when you're in that unique dynamic.
Yeah, absolutely. So, gold's a funny asset because it kind of like if you was at a supermarket and you're picking up a can of beans, you're looking at it and its nutrition value, etc. You look at gold, you pick it up and you're looking at it. Oh, hedges against market volatility, hedges against inflation, protects against downturn and instability. So it literally does what it says on the can. And when you look at what other governments are doing worldwide, if we just kind of step across the seas and we look at China, they've got a monstrous appetite for the yellow metal, and they're dumping U.S. treasuries right now. And guess what? They're actually moving away from the dollar, and they're actually purchasing gold. So again, the Chinese have a monstrous appetite for the yellow metal. Central banks right now are net buyers of gold, and that basically means that they're buying more gold today than they have done post previous COVID levels. So wow. Again, the government aren't necessarily going to back up our dollars for us because we came off of the gold standard, even though I personally believe we should be on some type of gold standard. And you probably hear talks in the market about BRICS nations, banding together, coming out with their own world reserve currency, trying to move away from settlement in dollars with oil and move away to a newer currency backed by gold itself, because gold is really the building blocks of any financial asset. So when you have the signs there, China's buying monstrous levels of the yellow metal. We're knowing that bank failures, we've already been told that there's going to be more bank failures this year. Our trade deficit is out of control. I haven't even touched onto Social Security and Medicare, which is also running out of money. Yeah. I don't have the solution. I wish I did. I wish there was a magic pill that made this all go away. But what does make sense is have a balanced portfolio with gold.
There's no doubt. And you can protect your investment earnings, particularly with a retirement IRA, something that Genesis Gold does a great job. Folks, pick up the phone, call 800-200-GOLD, 800-200-GOLD to begin your journey with our great new partners at Genesis Gold. Go do it today. Time to waste it. We'll be right back with more right after these messages.
Welcome back, everybody. We only have a few minutes left in the show, so there are a few things that I want to nail down. And to start off the discussion, John, let's start chronologically. Let's start with Chairman James Comer. Yeah. I just keep thinking to myself, I can't wait for the day, if it ever happens, I think that they should charge pay-per-view when oversight or judiciary or Ways and Means have 4 witnesses in front of them. Devin Archer, Jason Galanis, Tony Bobulinski, and Hunter Biden. And if it's in front of Ways and Means, you can throw in Jason or Gary Shapley and Joe Ziegler. Yeah. But the day that we could get all of them together to counter whatever Hunter Biden is saying. I think that you could sell pay-per-view for $60 and they could make a killing. It would go into some type of whistleblower fund. I think that would be a great way to raise money for these people.
Yeah, no, I agree. There was a lot of news in that Comer interview. Clearly, he's preparing criminal referrals against many of the players in this. That's not going to happen. It won't matter with the Biden DOJ, but it would start a clock running that a Trump DOJ, if President Trump were to win the office, could begin prosecuting people. That would be a big moment. And as he said, we have found so many crimes. That was a pretty big thing. He accused the president of committing crimes. That's the first time I've heard him use that language. That was pretty important. There was another thing that happened this morning that really caught my attention. I want to get your take on this because there's a big lawsuit by a Greenberg Traurig representing October 7th terror victims, Israeli-American citizens who were victimized by October 7th. They filed a suit saying that there are several U.S. groups who are collaborating with Hamas to put these protests on to destabilize the United States. And that collaboration began October 8th, the day after October 7th. That's a bombshell. You're not seeing a lot of legacy media have it. We got on Just the News. This is a big deal, isn't it?
Absolutely. And these, there I think 2 organizations listed in that lawsuit who, if this lawsuit proceeds and they were forced to cough up damages, I mean, I think that would obliterate their organization. But even more so than that, it sends a message, John, that you can't come into this nation, you can't come into our country and sow discord and foment violence, literal violence on college campuses without some type of punishment.
Yeah, follow the money, and you find out who's really behind this. And that's what I think James Comer was talking about earlier.
Yeah.
Of another fun moment that it came with Jason Foster, our good friend, founder of Empower Whistleblower Center, gave us those FBI and IRS whistleblowers. The idea that there are a dozen members of Congress that the Justice Department was spying on while those members of Congress and their staffers were doing oversight of the very agency spying on them, the FBI, the Justice Department. It's mind-boggling. That lawsuit, if he wins, could give us some really explosive new information about just how far-reaching government surveillance is.
Yeah, you don't spy on the people who are either elected officials or the people who they have appointed on their staff. You don't spy on those people unless you are concerned about whatever it is that they are going to find. And that's why I asked Jason that question. Was it hubris? Yes, it absolutely was hubris. But I think it was also paranoia. You look at this string of investigations, investigating the investigators, spying on the investigators, and this is exactly why the American people consistently have such a low opinion of the intelligence community and anyone who is perceived to have a connection with the intelligence community, because they are, unfortunately, this is not a blanket statement, but many of them are not to be trusted because they are doing things like this.
Yeah, that's pretty extraordinary. We had another fun story. It kind of ties into some of the things we were talking today with Peter Daszak and other things. Jim Jordan released some extraordinary new Facebook documents. These are Facebook's own emails, and it shows that Facebook was indeed being pressured by the Biden White House to suppress or kill the COVID-19 lab leak story, something we now know to be true. The FBI believes it to be true, right? And Facebook was chafing at it, saying, God, they're dishonest, meaning the Biden White House. Facebook senior executives calling the Biden White House dishonest. Now, having been the subject of several of their attacks, I know what they're talking about when they say dishonest, but really remarkable documents, great oversight work by Jim Jordan and his team.
When I read some of the excerpts from this communication coming from Facebook, I was shocked as all get out over their attitude. Yeah. Shocked as sugar over that, because you look at Facebook and you consider the Mark Zuckerberg and his relationship to Zuckerbucks in Wisconsin and here, there, and yonder, it just goes to prove that there are some people who are actually have a little bit of clarity of mind and critical thinking left, who are thinking to themselves, I don't think this is something that we should be doing on social media. We shouldn't be the ones controlling the narrative on a platform where speech is supposed to prevail.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. It's just not American. One last thing. All right, so Mike Johnson, Joe Biden, Mitch McConnell, Chuck Schumer got nothing done on the border, but states continue to do something really important. The latest one, Oklahoma outlawed, the legislature and the governor signed it, outlawed being an illegal immigrant in the state starting July 1st. If you're caught and you can't prove your status, you're in violation of the law. States filling the gap where the federal government has let us down.
Yeah, you can't get Joe Biden to do anything, but you can get Kevin Stitt and Greg Abbott and Ron DeSantis and some of the leaders of these red states to actually step in and protect the citizens of at least their states, and that has a trickle-down effect considering that oftentimes is the entry for illegal immigrants. So, they're going to be challenged in court, but God willing, there will be a turnaround in policy induced by an election coming in November, and then the American people can hopefully get the toothpaste back in the tube. All right, that's all that we have time for tonight, but thank you all so much for joining us on this beautiful Thursday evening. We look forward to seeing you again tomorrow, same time.